The referee's a podcast with Jack and Kelly too. Scottish Championship class, they give us the show. Footy tales from the pitch, controversies they scratch. Every moment they'll itch, no call left to bash.
Here we go again, we're back, the referee's a podcast. I bet you all were expecting there to be movement, but there's no movement today. Me and Jack Curry, I'm Cameron by the way, we're here in person. Jack, say hello.
Hello everybody,
And
yes.
give me a quick high five so they can hear.
Oh, that was a good one as well, by the way. No, yeah, we are together this week. I have got the week off work, so back up in the beautiful land of Glasgow and joining to you live from Cam and Referees Podcast HQ.
Yes. We're not really set up for doing this. The visual style that we've changed to this year in person, we didn't really consider it when we started it. So this is the solution. You've got cartoon versions of us not moving, but they do have nice football backgrounds, so it looks like we're at a game.
Yeah.
And they've got as close to our kits as it would let me do without actually putting in the team names, because it didn't like that.
No.
It didn't let me do a Queen's Park top.
Right.
It had to be a black and white straight horizontal striped shirt
Oh, okay.
and the vertical stripes for yourself.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
so we're doing one in person. I suppose for you guys it's never in person, but we're in person this week, so we've got a crap ton of things to look at. There's a butt ton of games, and we've got a load of predictions to do, and we're on more of a time limit than we usually are as well. So let's get cracking, Jack.
Yeah, let's get it going, Cammy boy, because there's a hell of a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Starting with the Big Fife derby on Friday night, which we actually caught a bit of together.
It's true.
And it was an excellent night for Dunfermline. You know, they really kind of controlled most of the game from what I've seen, had the better of the chances overall, and fully deserved the 2-0 victory, Cam. You know, Barney Stewart with that overhead kick.
Yeah.
Absolutely excellent finish. And then it was Chris Kane, wasn't it?
Yes.
Who got the decisive second. But I think you have to say, Wraith Rovers are absolutely tumbling, aren't they? And Dunfermline have now, leapfrogged them in the table. And who would have said that 2 or 3 weeks ago?
I know. Yeah, I know. Dunfermline have managed to finally pull it all together. They've kept on adding to that team and getting other players in, and new signing here, new right back there, new striker, and it's maybe starting to work out for them. They've maybe got that critical mass of players now that they can put out a good team, and they can play well, and they can get the result against, yes, in a bit of a free fall now, but a really good Wraith Rovers team.
But how long do we keep saying that about Wraith Rovers? There's so much discontent from their support about Barry Robson, about the style of football. Wraith Rovers fans, if you're listening or watching this, let us know in the comments how you are feeling. But Cam, the one thing that took my notice was on Monday morning when Wraith Rovers on social media put up the next match post, and there was 3 likes and about 15 comments, and the majority of it was all, don't bother, give Thistle the 3 points now. And I'm thinking, is it that bad in Kirkcaldy?
I know they're going through a bit of a rough patch at the moment, but I'm certain that they've got enough about them to turn it around at some point in the near future. I'm sure you'll be hoping that it's not in their upcoming game, but we'll have to see how that goes. But in terms of this game, obviously Dunfermline seemed the better of the two teams. They looked like they were in control. Wraith, a couple of spells throughout the game, 5-10 minute spells here and there where you think, oh wait, no, maybe Wraith are in this, before the momentum completely spiraled back towards Dunfermline's favour, and they ended up running out pretty deserved winners in the end, and obviously a big crowd at the game, and obviously a bunch of people watching at home as well. So 6,753 in attendance at that Friday night game, and who knows how many other people watching at home. So They've done the business when it counted, and they've got the 3 points to show for it.
Yeah, no, definitely. Massive result for Dunfermline, and we'll go on to another massive win that they've had midweek as well at some point, but when you kind of look at Dunfermline in the grand scheme of things, it was kind of looking as like one of those seasons where if they didn't kind of get things into gear, they weren't going to be a playoff challenging team, but they've actually kind of shut a couple of people up now with a couple of impressive victories. You look at a clean sheet at home against a team like Wraith Rovers, it's very, very impressive, but that's now 3 defeats on the spin for Wraith Rovers, and they're struggling, Cam, and a point I made a couple of weeks ago, and I think it actually stands, they're struggling in big games.
Yeah.
You look at them, they can beat a team like, no offence to them, even though they're well above them in the table, are both comfortably, at home. We've seen them beat teams below them, Morton, in the league. I'm sure they've beaten Airdrie at some point as well.
Yeah.
But the games that they've lost, the big Fife derby against Dunfermline, the bigger team against Ross County, they lost to St Johnstone, they lost to Thistle. They are losing. They lost at home against, was it Ayr as well? So they're losing all these big games, Cam.
Yeah.
Is there a mentality issue with Wraith?
I don't know. It does seem like that's quite often what we go to when things are happening like this. Being a mentality issue, and I think you've got to say there's certainly an aspect of that. They could just be getting unlucky at certain points, but we've not really seen the performances from them that you'd expect. You'd expect them to be playing at a higher level. They're a team that's been about the championship forever. They know how the football's played here, so it's certainly strange to see them nosedive quite so heavily, but we're still only 11 games into the season. They're still in a respectable 6th place, and they're not off it by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm sure all it will take is another, a couple of good weeks, a couple of good wins, and I think everyone will be forgetting that they've even had the blip. But we have to wait and see if that happens first.
So you're not on the bandwagon then? Robson must go.
No, I don't think so. He's the first manager that they've managed to stick with for any reasonable amount of time. Give him the chance.
Yeah, literally, because it's interesting that point, we made how much Wraith Rovers' managerial issues derailed their season last year. They surely don't want that to happen again, but I think, you see that 1 in 6 league games there, Cam, it's not good optics for Wraith Rovers, considering they had that run from last season into the start of this season, and it looked all promising, and it's kind of fallen off a cliff now. So they've got some big games coming up, and kind of like they made me point about Dunfermline a couple of weeks ago, Wraith Rovers now to show that they're ready to turn their season around, because just a few weeks ago we were including them in a possible title fight with Thistle and St Johnstone. Not anymore.
No, not as part of a title fight, but you look at them in 6th place, they're still only 3 points behind Ayr United in 4th, so it's all still to play for in terms of those playoff spots. Obviously 10 points off the what is now the top 2, so they're a wee ways away, but it's a long season. St Johnstone have recently showed that regardless of how good your form is, there's a good chance it's going to take a dip, which obviously we'll come on to. But fantastic victory in the end there for Dunfermline. Creeps them up the table some more. Big 3 points. And Wraith Rovers, away licking their wounds. Yeah,
absolutely. And then getting on to Saturday, you talk about a team falling off in Wraith Rovers. St Johnstone are certainly having a bit of a wobble just now. Not talking anything about falling off a cliff. It's only a defeat, but that's now 3 games in a row, Cam, without a win in the league. This time, what transpired to be an extremely disappointing afternoon up at Gayfield. Having taken the lead so early on under Josh McPake, when Arbroath really left himself exposed early on in the game, you're kind of expecting St Johnstone then to go and kick on. We've seen Dunfermline win by a handsome margin up there, but they just couldn't do it, and it was an 11-minute spell. A double by Finlay Marshall and Gavin Riley sandwiched in between that separated the sides and gave Arbroath an extremely impressive 3 points. They're still sitting in the third there, Cam. It's huge in the context of the season, which we'll get on to in a wee bit. But in isolation with this game, just how much credit do we need to give Arbroath here?
Oh, not all the credit. They put up with a barrage against St Johnstone. Obviously, St Johnstone are expected to go there and hand out a bit of a hiding. Especially, like you say, going down the early goal. But it's one of those ones, again, I think we touched on it a few weeks ago, where sometimes scoring that goal too early, gives them a wee bit of overconfidence. The players maybe take it down a gear because they think, right, we've scored early, this game's already in the bag. and then that sort of festers. I don't know if that was the situation with St Johnstone, but based on the stats here, they've had the vast majority of the possession. They've peppered the goal. Goalkeepers managed to get 5 saves. So, fair play to Arbroath. They've withstood it. And then, like you say, just an 11-minute period, and boom, they've absolutely sunk what was looking to be runaway league leaders.
Well,
they've managed it.
But the thing is, though, is so much it's been made of St Johnstone, but you see how easily they've just been kind of clawed back. Their 6 points is kind of nothing at this stage of the season, and it's already been done, So I think so much has been made of St Johnstone so far, and the first kind of wobble we've seen, we'll get on to, but they're kind of been capitalised upon, So it's kind of really, really interesting now to see how St Johnstone are going to react. When we looked at the highlights, Cam, there was quite clearly a couple of goalkeeping errors in there from St Johnstone. The first by Finlay Marshall should 100% be kept out. He get pretty much 2 hands right on the ball.
And not, like as you mentioned it when we were watching it, not a particularly powerful shot. It wasn't hit with ferocity, and there was no way the keeper could have saved it, even with getting 2 hands to it. I don't know what the keeper was doing, but yeah, that was one he should have saved. And
then the was it the second one where he did make a save for the first shot, but parried it out to the Arbroath player right in the 6-yard box, and you just can't do that. It's simple mistakes here.
Definitely.
I'm sure in analysing he'll be kicking himself because he's come into a lot of praise, with some big saves at the end of matches. But there you kind of do need to say, it kind of cost St Johnstone on the day.
Definitely. The first one would have been enough to shake their confidence. Second one enough to break it. And then obviously the third for good measure, just putting them down, fairly comfortably in the end. When you look at it, they look at the scoreline 3-1. You think, oh well, Arbroath have they've done the business at home. They've pumped them a wee bit, but actually you look behind the scenes and it's a bit of a different story. St Johnstone definitely giving away points there.
Yeah, 100%, and back to back, big scoreline wins for Arbroath. Beating yourselves. Queen's Park 4-1 at home, and then beating St Johnstone 3-1 at home. It really can't be getting any better for them.
No, definitely not.
And watching the other teams about them falter.
Exactly.
You can't really say they'll be looking up. A playoff finish for them at the end of the season, they would be absolutely laughing.
I think so. Coming into the season, newly promoted. A vastly different team from the team that did depart the championship, and they've absolutely done it. They've found the winning formula so far, and they've really sort of showed that a wee bit extra guts in the game, and you can always come away with a result. So pure testament to the willpower of those Arbroath players putting up the strong fight and then really doing the business and taking those points off league leaders there. Fantastic 3 points for them. Good job.
Yeah, 100%. And then I think that swiftly takes us on to Ayr United, the first of 2 games. We'll speak about them this week. And a fairly impressive victory at home against Morton, where it all looked as if it was going to be yet another draw for the Ton. But it wasn't to be, with Ayr United come through with the win there. Marco Roos, Cammy Ballantyne for Morton, and then Ben Dempsey. What did you make of that one, Kim?
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably would have been better for us and funnier had it been the 1-1 like we were expecting at 85 minutes into the game. Morton doing it again and holding someone to a 1-1 or worse draw. But no, Ayr United did manage to keep pressing. Obviously they had the penalty saved. The rebound cleared and away for a corner. At that point, obviously still some danger, but I think Morton are thinking, right, okay, well, brilliant. Late penalty saved, sorted, we're going to get this point. And then obviously the resulting corners eventually what has led to the goal. So I think there'll be a bit fuming about that. In the highlights you could actually see the keeper immediately get up and shouting and thrusting arms around, obviously unhappy at his defence, at the way that they've not managed to defend the ball into the box. The eventual ball free and sort of inside the area there, which has just led to being latched onto by Dempsey and thrashed that one home. So I think when you look at it on the scale of things, Ayr have probably deserved that, and probably quite righteously took all the points, but Morton will certainly be kicking themselves that again, it's a a late goal that's managed to sacrifice some points for them there. So yeah, I think on the whole probably a fair outcome. But Ayr United, what's that? 8 games unbeaten now. Unbelievable run that they're on.
Absolutely. And it was interesting there, as you say there, it's back-to-back games for Morton where they have conceded late on. Obviously it was injury time against Thistle, with Alex Samuel scoring when just a couple of weeks ago, when Morton were 1-up, and then that game there, getting, chucking away a point away from home with just 3 minutes on the clock. I think that'll be the thing that Emery will be probably most disappointed, with the fact that they've been in decent positions in games, with the clock kicking down, but just now they can't quite see it out.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on there. They've got to, stay switched on and awake to everything that's happening in the game right on till the end. Can't switch off even for a second, and I'm not necessarily saying that that's what's happened to them in these games, but you've got to stay fully concentrated. Coming up against a team with the quality of players that Ayr do, on the sort of streak and form that they're in, that they're going to keep on going right to the final whistle, and they're really going to hammer you. So yeah, I think they'll be analysing that and seeing what is exactly went wrong that's caused them to crumble quite like that at the end. But at the end of the day, the game's over, the points are gone. There's only so long these teams linger and look at these sorts of things before it's quickly on to the next game. The games come thick and fast, and you've got to prepare for the opponent coming up. There's no point looking at what could have been in the previous game. So they'll take the little lessons that they need to take, and they'll apply it to their upcoming game plan. No time to dwell on too much on what you did wrong. Rather take it as a lesson and move on to the next one, which I'm sure they'll be looking to do.
And where do you think, when we get a few months down the line, maybe into the start of the new year, do you think Morton will be more in contention of a playoff pushing team, or will they be looking over their shoulder, do you more think, as we get into that stage of the season?
No, I think it would just be that sort of, the way with Morton where they're going to be sitting in 6th or 7th, and there's going to be no danger that they're going to be pushing on to the playoffs, but also no danger that they're going to be anywhere near the relegation playoff. I think it's starting to shape out on the Morton side of things as just being one of those Morton seasons.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's still a long way to go, and they have only gained 11 points from 11 games, which obviously isn't fantastic, but I obviously don't have the stats in front of me. I've not gone back to previous years, but I don't know where they, if this is good or bad for their sorts of seasons. This feels like sort of par for the course.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. I think it's just very, very strange when you do look at the league table there and you see that, at this stage of the season, 11 games in, there's still 4 teams who have got 1 win or less.
Yeah.
Which is pretty mad.
It's shocking.
It is shocking, really, and you think the amount of draws we've seen across the board this season, and a lot of teams, not capitalising a lot of opportunities. So, yeah, it's really, really interesting, Cam. I think there's potential for Morton to kick on and, be in that kind of Dunfermline, Wraith Rovers, United position, especially when you see Arbroath doing so well as what they are, but they just don't seem to be able to get that win on the day, or as it proved to Ayr, their second defeat of the season. But I think they have got the team spirit and the overall quality to not be looking over their shoulder, but it's whether the teams below them can really take the mantle to Morton at some point as well and kick themselves into gear, because we've not really seen anything from Ross County, Queen's Park Warriors so far. No,
we'd expect obviously Ross County to kick on at some point. We thought maybe it was coming when they got that first victory a few weeks back, but they've not carried on with that. They've not really done. They had a nice point against St Johnstone, but as we sort of looked at when we were looking into it, it wasn't a close game. They lucked out with that point, and obviously they've not managed it again, which we'll get on to. But Queen's Park don't have anything in the form of goal scoring ability.
No.
And Airdrie are unfortunately for them just being Airdrie again. So and from that side of things, you've maybe got to, as a Morton player, fan, manager, you're maybe worrying about Ross County, but I don't think they're worrying an awful lot about the other 2 teams down there below them. So unless something monumental happens at either Queen's Park or Airdrie, I think again it's going to be a case of Morton are just going to be sitting there getting draw after draw, occasional win, occasional defeat, and just adding a few points on here and there. And I think again they're just going to end up probably sitting exactly where they are now in 7th place, by the time all the games are finished.
Yeah, no, it's certainly an interesting one there, Cam. You know, they're a bit of an enigma now, Morton. We're kind of there from this season, and as you said, what everybody's actually expecting from them. So we'll definitely just need to kind of keep an eye on it, but they'll be disappointed with that one on the day. One of the sides, though, you spoke about there, Ross County.
Yes.
I was there at Firhill on Saturday, watching that one. You know, excellent win for Thistle. You know, we certainly, you know, gave Ross County a couple of opportunities in the first half. You know, with some slack passing.
Yeah.
Ronan Hale, you know, arguably could have had himself a pretty straightforward double. But Josh Clark stood firm and kept himself
Yeah.
out. And honestly, Cam, you know, apart from that, Ross County didn't really create too much. Their dangerous player by a mile on the day was Jay Henderson, but he was hooked fairly early on in the second half, which was pretty surprising, to be honest. So I think Ross County will be extremely disappointed with how they're playing. You know, I think that when I looked at Ross County and was kind of watching it, there was no obvious style of play. You know,
right.
they were getting the ball with their midfielders or whatever, and you just kind of thought, they don't really know what they're doing here to penetrate a defence. That was the impression I got. It's like good players but not a good system.
Right, okay.
Or no system really. So whether that's just a hangover from the Don County days, or whether there is still something in that core of players that isn't clicking as a team,
Yeah.
that is still to be, you know, questioned. For Thistle though, we grew into the game more and more as it went on. You know, we didn't start our best. You know, as I said, we gifted Ross County some opportunities.
Yeah,
and
certainly did. There was a few slack passes there that is, you know, shaky, slow playing out from the back moments that, as always do, invites pressure and invites challenge and invites mistake. Luckily, Ronan Hale, the all-star striker, was unable to really slot it anywhere apart from low near the keeper. You know, any sort of amount of distance away from the keeper with a tiny bit of curve, and he probably could have scored them both. But oh well for him, and you know, all to your benefit there.
Absolutely.
Obviously, Big Ocean.
Yeah,
Big Ocean's
the
managed to get on to the end of Logan Chalmers' cross into the box.
Yeah.
Really, really nice cross. Really well finished.
Aye, and I mean, he was the player that sprayed the pass out to Chalmers as well, you know, and a goal that was started right on our own byline by Stevie Lawless and played out, and I think that's exactly what you were talking about there, Cam, with Thistle just now. It's that risk and reward style of football, where we are going to give teams chances and we are going to give it away trying to play out, but when it works, that is how it works. You know, it starts from your own byline. It's swift, quick passing, and Ocean Smith's desire, burst and run to get on the end of a quality Logan Chalmers ball in was just absolutely fantastic. You know, and he is really an excellent player for this level, Cam. You know, the way he's controlling games for us just now, he's got a bit of a tackle on him as well. He's physical, but technically he's just so good.
Yeah.
And you need that really, you know, that one player that can do that pass, that has got that extra desire. And he's ultimately got the finish there to prove it as well.
Definitely, yeah. He's got a nice goal for himself. Obviously, in terms of the game, pivotal. In terms of the league, you could maybe even say pivotal.
Well, at that point, I think when you know you're beating Ross County, and then 3 minutes later, Arbroath make it 3-1 against St Johnstone, and the fact that then Thistle have got that looming game in hand, which we'll get on to against Ayr United.
Yeah.
It was exciting, because you're knowing what that
opens
can
it right
mean.
up.
It does really open it up, and it puts us right in contention. So that one against Ross County was massive.
Huge. Yeah, absolutely huge. Like you mentioned, at 90 minutes, you're maybe not noticing quite how impactful it is because the Tuesday games haven't been, but this put you so close. Really, really big 3 points, and it must be nice that that's one of the ones that you've managed to make it to this year.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been great, and the fact that it's 3 wins, I've now seen us beat Ross County twice this season, home and away. 3 wins against Ross County this season. It's absolutely fantastic. Considering they've just came down from the Premiership and they've got the highest wage bill and the biggest, best sort of squad technically on paper. So definitely an interesting one, and it's catapulted Thistle into an excellent position in the league that we'll get on to in a wee minute. But firstly, Cam, yourselves against Ayr Geonians at the City Stadium, 0-0 here. So not the afternoon that you were looking for. Based on the highlights, at least it looked as if you had the kind of best of the chances, but there was nothing too clear cut really. What was your kind of take in the game?
My take in the game was it was quite a lot like what I would imagine watching like high school football would be. Just a lot of play happening in the sort of middle of the park. Not an awful lot happening in the attacking third. No real good chances. I say that Queen's Park did have, in my opinion, 3 solid chances in the game to score. Should have scored at least one of them, very possibly all 3 of them, and they've not managed it. You can partially put that down to still not having Josh Fowler available and no strikers really at all fit at the club to play. Even Liam McLeish was unavailable for selection due to an issue that he had after coming on for a very short period at the end of the Arbroath game. So it was Seb Draws playing up front again. And again, I've got a lot of time for Seb Draws. He actually had a few really nice moments in the game where he's managed to pick up the ball and drive at people, but he succumbs to the same thing every time, where he either holds on to it for a bit too long, or he's right to hold on to it, but he goes the wrong way. And there's 3 guys to his right, and there's no one to his left. He's going to the right. I don't know if it's that he wants the challenge to have taken on 3 people, but it's just, generally speaking, it's decision making that's his problem.
And one player that you spoke to me about off podcast that you're expecting a bit more from, Tyrese McDonald. Why don't you talk to me about that?
Yeah, so he started the season really well. He was playing a lot of games, starting a lot of games. Scored a wonderful free kick against someone, maybe Wraith Rovers potentially. Can't remember. Wonderful free kick, really really good. But he's not really cracked on so much since then. I'd say maybe his performance has been getting gradually worse. But the biggest gripe, something that when I said it to you, you mentioned, so crucial at our level, Tyrese McDonald does not get stuck in. He doesn't get the foot in. They're 50-50 up ahead of him. It's no 50-50 to him. He's already decided he's not getting it.
Because on that point, just quickly, that's one of the things I love about Logan Chalmers.
Mm-hmm.
Any Thistle fan will tell you he tracks back. He will put a foot in and tackle. He might not be the best at it, but he tries.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you want from a player. Is just
Definitely.
to give their all and will put a foot in and do the defensive, duties when needed. Because that's the difference at our level in these fine moments between.
Yeah, you can't just have some guy sitting waiting at the halfway line for the ball to go. Maybe in certain special circumstances, but generally speaking, everyone needs to play their part in attacking and in defending.
It's why a team like Arbroath are third.
Exactly. They play together as a unit. They play not only for the badge and the manager, but for their teammate beside them, left and right. He's no there. I'm filling in. You fill in. It works well. They've got it. Ticking very nicely. Whereas Queen's Park and Airdrie don't have that at the moment. I'd still give Queen's Park a slight benefit in terms of injuries, not really having a squad available to pick what you would class as starters as part of the starting 11. So, hopefully as time goes on, that sort of comes back a wee bit. Josh Fowler I saw him at half time or maybe the end of the game walking past, and he looked, he was walking fine. So I'm hoping that he's just at the end of a little niggly one, and he'll maybe be back this week coming up. But because we've desperately missed him, I know I've been saying that we need to find goals from elsewhere, but when the goals are still not coming from elsewhere, we just need the man scoring the goals back. So fingers crossed. We've got Josh Fowler. Michael Ruth, other striker, he just had an operation, so he's still out for
Couple of months,
considerable
probably.
time. Yeah, he was limping along. He got an operation at the same time as forgotten man Zach Mockin. He's just had an operation as well, so he'll maybe be back at some point in a few months' time. But yeah, not a good game. It probably deserved to be 0-0, based on the way it transpired, and no one really looking like they had a clinical killer edge. So I think probably all fair. But the one thing I was pleased about was the manager's post-game interview. Usually it's, I think there was some positives, and I think we done this really well, and I think we done that really well. Obviously negatives, but this time it was, I'm really unhappy that we've not won that game, and I've made them all aware of that. that was a game that we should have won, and I'm absolutely fuming that we've not won it. So don't get me wrong, I'm sure he did then go on to say things like, we done bits and pieces well, but I'm glad that was the focal point. Usually it's not. Usually that's the after point. But he at least fully recognises that was a critical game for us to win against a poor team, and it may be our last chance to win until we play them again, based on the way our form has been and the way it's sort of trajecting. So yeah, bad day at the office for both teams, but fingers crossed it's a kick up the arse for us.
Yeah, I think it needs to be, otherwise I think we're going to be looking at the bottom two there.
Yes.
Playing against each other, and that swiftly takes us on to our 2 midweek games in Airdrie. So, we've not spoke about it yet, because obviously at this point in the timeline it hasn't happened, but they've sacked Danny Lennon.
Yes,
the
they
headline news, following a pretty dismal Dunfermline defeat 4-0 at home. It's not the first time, as we mentioned earlier, we've seen Dunfermline this season win very comfortably 2-0 away from home. They done it up at Arbroath earlier on this season. What was it, 5-0 in that game? They've now done it here 4-0 away to Airdrie. Dunfermline are so inconsistent here that fair play to them on the night. I think this is what we're going to see from Dunfermline, up and down. But I think rather than talking too much about Dunfermline here, it has to be about Airdrie. They are now looking for their third permanent manager of the season, Cameron. We're not even at the end of October.
I know.
What do you make of what's happening there? It's an absolute travesty, isn't it?
So, obviously, we still don't know the ins and outs of what happened with McCabe. Why 2 games into the season he all of a sudden decided that he needed to leave for family and personal reasons. It's all fair enough. It's like any job. If it's not right, or you need to change it up or quit, that's your prerogative. We don't know if there was something else that happened behind the scenes that's maybe driven him away, but what we've seen since is not been anything pretty at Airdrie. I think they were hoping, experienced man in, get Danny Lennon, right the ship. Maybe not the most exciting, but stable. It's been anything but. It's not been exciting. It's not been stable. If anything, they're just slowly getting worse and worse. And obviously the back room at Airdrie have thought the same, and they've decided decisively, this was a mistake. Sorry, Danny. Off you go, out the door. Don't let it hit you on the way out.
The Danny Lennon appointment was just an absolutely bizarre one for me.
Wasn't it just?
Literally, it was one of those ones where at the time, you're looking at it and you're going, it doesn't make sense to bring that guy who was out of football for so long. He'd done well in the past, but we're talking a long time ago now, literally. And it's one of those ones where you're thinking it wasn't a natural fit for the team that McCabe had built.
Definitely not.
The fans weren't happy. We've seen across Scottish football fans not being happy with the teams and managers that are appointed, and they've been very quickly hounded out the door.
Yes.
And it's the same with Danny Lennon. It could be the fan power here at Airdrie, really having an effect, but I think the stats don't lie. They still don't have a win this season.
Yeah.
They've been really, really poor in a lot of their games, and a 4-0 defeat at home against Dunfermline, leaving them so isolated at the bottom of the table. They'll have been disappointed as well, Cam, obviously not picking up a win away to yourselves if they're looking to try and not finish bottom of the table.
Yeah.
So you need to almost say fair play to the Airdrie board for making this decision.
In this instance, I'm 100% with you there.
Yeah, I think you need to look at it and be that way. I think it's now situation critical for the next appointment, though.
Yes.
Because they can't get this one wrong. They can't give the next guy 8 or games, get into January and sack him and look for the 4th man. Because that isn't realistic. They're not going to stay up that way. So they do need to take their time here and make sure the next appointment's right.
Do we think maybe, based on what happened with Wraith last year, what they've done is they've went too quickly with it?
I think getting rid of Lennon's the right decision, because I don't think he was
No,
the
not
right
this.
decision.
With McCabe leaving, they thought, right, we can't let what happened to Wraith Rovers happen to us. We're going to appoint someone very quickly.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Look, there's Danny Lennon. He's available. He's happy to do it. We're happy. Cool, let's do it. Boom, boom, boom. Done, sorted. Look, we did it. We got the manager in quickly. Now let's do this thing.
Yeah.
I think they've maybe went too far the other way, and they've just went for the first guy who's walked in. Danny Lennon actually didn't apply for the job, and they didn't ask him. He just happened to be walking by one day, and they just shouted him in. Danny, perfect, you're here.
Yeah.
Come on in. We've got a job for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they've got to take a wee bit more time making sure they get the right guy, someone who fits the bill a little bit better. But again, you still don't want to be 2 months down the line and not have a manager in the door. So there's a fine line to be tread there. Fingers crossed for Airdrie's sake that they find it this time. But as you know, everybody hates fucking Airdrie.
Yeah.
So,
and they'll be without Liam McStravick now for 3 games, which is going to be a
is it
straight
3 for a straight?
Is
I
it
thought
2
it was
at
just
level?
2.
Maybe it's 2
I
and then
think it's
get an
just
extra one
2.
if it's violent
If
conduct.
it can be reviewed and upped.
But he's out for a couple of games now, so that'll be a big mission. Let's concentrate now on Dunfermline for a couple of minutes. Back-to-back wins. They got it on the Friday night against Wraith Rovers at home. That's 2 clean sheets with 2 wins there as well, Cam. Andy Todd certainly looks to be impressive.
Yes.
It looks to be their kind of sort of standout player this season. Matty Todd getting on the score sheet and Chris Kane again. I almost don't want to say it, but do you think this is Dunfermline clicking into gear, or do you think they're just going to be inconsistent?
I think so. I think the more of the Todds that we're seeing this year. I know Matty Todd hasn't been playing quite so much as Andrew Todd. So maybe not quite fair to judge them on the same sort of spectrum. They obviously play different positions, but when they play together, they play well. When they play separately, they play well. And I think Dunfermline play better with them on the park. I don't know if it's... Obviously, they're talented guys, but obviously there's that Dunfermline connection. Is it that they're a bit more passionate? They maybe care just that touch more. Not that the other players don't care, but because of their connection to the club, maybe they just play that little bit extra out of their skins for the club, for the badge, and playing together. I'm sure it happened earlier in the season where they assisted each other and they both scored and all that sort of stuff. So they play, I think, better with the Todds on the park. I think as the season goes on, I think that will continue to be the case. I think we'll see them putting up good numbers as the season goes on. And I would just like to say all of Dunfermline's good games here have been Zach Ruddenless.
You had to get that point.
Yes, they were going.
Because was he on the bench there for that?
No, still out.
Right.
He's still out. He's nowhere near. He's not even training, I would presume. So that Zach Rudden is their problem.
Maybe. Maybe we'll be interested to see what happens.
So
when
Zach Rudden comes back, when he plays, they'll lose.
Have you got your money on that?
The referee's a podcast. I was going to say guarantee, but I can't guarantee. It's the future.
Well,
it's an extra prediction for this week.
There you go.
When Zach Rudden comes back into the Dunfermline fold, their form will drop off a cliff.
Interesting.
Boom.
Interesting. But Dunfermline fans are loving life right now, and it's catapulted them up the table, sitting just outside the playoff zone in 5th place there, ahead of their 5 rivals, Wraith Rovers, who are going the other way. So it's all rosy for Neil Lennon and his side. But this is the one I've been so excited to talk about. Thistle's game in hand against Ayr United, and it was an excellent night at Firhill. One of those ones where, again, like the kind of Ross County game, we did get better in the second half, but we were still pretty good in the first half without actually, finding a goal. Gifted a chance to Ayr United right in the stroke of half time when Lee Ashcroft sadly picked up an injury, and hopefully that's not too bad because he's an internal part, of the team, captain, leader, experience, so that's crucial. That he's not going to be out for too long. Fair play to Ethan Walker. It was a tidy finish, one that Clark couldn't keep out. But second half, firstly, thank you to David Mitchell for his slip and his clean straight to a Thistle player, and we duly obliged, take advantage of it. Sosa finishing as well, and then an absolutely outstanding, almost wonder strike from Ben Stanley. Cam, summed up Thistle. I said the goal against Ross County summed up exactly how Thistle play under Mark Wilson. Well, this does as well. And I think when I watched the interview with Stanley after the game, that's the Alex Ray effect coming into play here too. Was Ayr United, Kyle Urey picked up the ball in his edge of his own box. Stanley won it back, and as soon as he won it back in the same motion, curled it right into the top corner. It was unbelievable.
Brilliant.
It was superb. And just shows how up for it this team is. We all keep saying it for how there's something special about this team this year. There's something a bit different. There's a desire to win. There's a real connection with the fans. Mark Wilson and Alex Ray deserve all the credit they're getting just now, and it was an absolutely duly deserved 3 points in the night.
Well, I'm glad for you, and obviously looking at the table now, this victory brings you on level points with the uncatchable St Johnstone. Obviously, goal difference still in their favour, but the uncatchable's been caught.
Well, exactly, and that was what Jonathan Sutherland in the BBC labelling them that just a week ago.
Yeah.
You know, and you think, look at it now. You know, so it's very, very interesting there. Everybody at Thistle, I think we've been quite happy to almost been going under the radar a wee bit, you know, just keeping quite quiet.
Yeah.
You know, we've not been steamrolling teams, you know, 4-5-1.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's been a goal here and a goal there,
Yeah.
but that's more
Just
than
doing the
good enough.
business
It's doing
quietly in the
business.
background. That's all that you can really... Not all that you can hope for, but it's probably what you want to be hoping for. Like you
Absolutely.
say, you don't want that target on your back like St Johnstone, where teams know, oh, right, okay, we need to work really hard and beat them, you know.
Yeah.
They're really good, so we're going to work really, really hard. Not that people don't look at the fact that this and go, they're really good, but yeah, I think up until now, people have been going, okay, we can probably beat Partick Thistle, but now they'll be looking at it a bit more, oh, right, okay, they're as good as St Johnstone, so therefore we need to play against them like we play against St Johnstone.
I think with Thistle, so much was made about losing Graham. People actually didn't really look at the team that we still have and what have added to it, you know. And I think somebody like Tony Watt encapsulates how much more of a team we are now. Alex Samuel started the game and he's been really good coming off the bench, but it didn't work for him starting, and Watt came on at half time, and that instant link-up play, you know, that instant benefit of having him up front made such a difference. You know, we do shout out to Let's Host Stanway for the goals, but also Smith, yet again, was excellent. Chalmers, yet again, excellent. The whole team really was excellent with no kind of falters in there at all. So, as you said, they're kind of joint top of the league.
Yeah.
You know, I think when you looked at the defeat against St Johnstone in the first game of the season when they thumped us 5-1, I don't think, you know, when you have 10 games from there, you were expecting that would have been level top on the same points as them. You know, it's been absolutely excellent from Thistle. We spoke about how important the win against Ross County was. It was important because it gave us this opportunity, and the team took full advantage of it.
Too right.
You know, it is going to be a really difficult game coming up now when we go away to Wraith Rovers on Saturday. That's going to be difficult. We know that Wraith Rovers have been struggling. It's 3 defeats in a row. You know, but from a Thistle perspective, I'm not looking at that one going, that's going to be an easy one for us. That's going to be an easy Wraith, 4th defeat in a row. I'm expecting that to be a real tough game for Thistle going up there on Saturday. So I think for all, we're now joint top of the league. That means absolutely nothing if you go out there and you lose your next game and St Johnstone pick up something. So it's about kicking on from this stage. It's about having the desire to actually think we are here and we can take this fight, and it's going to be a long season, but we're in it.
Again, as we keep talking about, and even have today, it's about the mentality of it all. So as long as you guys can continue to tell yourself that all you need to do is just go up the park and score a goal and you win, that's going to be big. So yeah, all fair play to you. You know, doing what was unthinkable just a few weeks ago, managing to catch up to St Johnstone, but as we keep touching on, it is a long season. There's still an awful lot of games to go. An awful lot of games to, you know, keep almost perfect. Because despite St Johnstone's blip, we've got to imagine that they'll be back with a vengeance at some point. Might not be this week, might not be the week after, but at some point that machine's going to click back into gear. They still have a fantastic football team, well managed generally. So yeah, they'll turn things around and they'll go back to mostly winning ways, and you've got to do the same. So we'll keep an eye on that. Obviously, you touched on it there, and then we have a few times. There's games this weekend again. Surprisingly enough,
no Friday nights.
No Friday night game this week. No Friday night, all Saturday. So we'll kick off with the first game there, Airdrie against Arbroath. Airdrie obviously licking their wounds big time. Arbroath looking for blood.
Really interesting game, Kim. Really interesting game. You know, I'm not sure. I've not actually read who's going to be in temporary charge from Airdrie.
No idea.
I'm not expecting an appointment to be made before this game. If it is, then that would be amazing. But I'm not expecting an appointment, so it's going to be interesting here for Airdrie. On paper, this is probably their most winnable game of the season. But as things stand, Arbroath 14 points ahead of them. The form that Arbroath are in, albeit, you know, Arbroath do pack up the majority of their wins at home. It'll be an interesting one to see what happens here. It's, interesting is the word. Yeah,
no, I mean, you look at it, you say yes, you look at it on paper, and it's, you know, maybe Airdrie's most winnable game. I think that's if you're looking at paper pre-season. You know, you look at the current paper, and you look at that, and you think Airdrie have got no chance. No wins yet, only 4 points, 4 draws so far, and losing, quite well in their last game. Obviously losing McStravick as well, and Arbroath on fire at the moment. Yes, they're going away from home, but Airdrie just lost 4-0 at home, so it's that way where you've got to look at this on the scheme of things at the moment and think that's a fairly easily winnable game for Arbroath. But we'll never know until we see, will we? Maybe Danny Lennon was more of a hindrance than anything else, and maybe seeing a team unburdened by him will maybe perform a little bit better. But
yeah, it'll be interesting for me, the two leakiest defences in the league coming up against each other there. 18 conceded by Arbroath and 20 conceded by Airdrie, so they could be a high scoring affair at the Excelsior, so we'll wait and see in that one. Then Morton, this is going to be really interesting.
This is a strange one. I don't know what this is thinking,
No, St Johnstone, we talked about it there, they've not won in 3 games. It has allowed Thistle, my side, to come up there level on points with them. And it's now all about St Johnstone and how they react. They knew that their last game was big and they lost, and we capitalised on that. They would have clearly, had an eye on the game on Tuesday night and, watched that, seen the highlights and seen that we've beaten Ayr United and there's pressure now on them. They've been lamped up by the media. They've been, spoken up by a lot of different people, and they're now got a situation where they've not got an easy game.
Yes.
They're away to Morton. Morton on the back of a disappointing defeat away to Ayr United. Do you see St Johnstone coming back here straight away? Does it almost feel as though they need to come back and win straight away here?
It feels like they need to come back. But like you touched on there, it's maybe the worst fixture that they could have hoped for a game where they need to bounce back. They've not been looking good. Obviously, they lost on the back of 2 draws as well. They're not the free scoring team that we initially saw. They're starting to concede a little bit. They're dropping points, and they want to get back to things as quickly as possible. And for the sake of their season, for the sake of potentially not losing first place, they've got to win this game, and it's a mighty tough one to come up against. So I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm going to certainly be keeping tabs on that one.
And yourselves, Queen's Park, you're taking on Ayr United at home. Ayr United obviously have been playing really well, but lost to Thistle at Firhill midweek. What do you make of yourselves going into that one?
Not positive. The only thing that will maybe brighten my mood slightly is if I watch the manager's pre-game interview and he says that's Josh Fowler back. He will be playing. He will be starting the match, and he's going to score a hat-trick. Obviously, the manager can't say that ahead of time, but that's the only thing that I'll maybe think, okay, this could maybe turn things a little bit for us. If we're still going into that game without a striker, then we're not going to score any goals, and it's going to be inevitable that Ayr put on Dom Thomas to score against us, even though he's not really been playing an awful lot for them. Not a great thought towards the game at the moment. I've been surprised before, but I don't think I'll be surprised on Saturday.
It's definitely going to be a tough one for yourselves, and as mentioned earlier, a tough one for Thistle here away to Wraith Rovers. Wraith 3 defeats in a row, as I've already mentioned. Even though we're in such exciting form, it's now I think 10 league games without defeat. It's really, really good for Thistle, but this isn't going to be easy, is it, for the Jags up in Kirkcaldy?
No, it's not going to be tough. It's not going to be easy. Sorry. And
I'd love it not to be tough.
You've obviously loads and loads of times in the past mentioned that you don't like going away to Wraith Rovers.
We have a terrible record at Starks Park.
Real trouble at Starks. So I think that would be fairly typical, wouldn't it? You can imagine maybe Morton holding St Johnstone to a draw, and then yourselves losing away to Wraith Rovers after them not winning in weeks, and you guys being in imperious form. Obviously, for you, I hope that's not the case, but I do.
We'll just need to wait and see. As I said, I'm not massively confident, but I'm also not. It's a weird one, isn't it? When you've not got a good record somewhere, a team's out of form. It's classic Thistle, but we are playing really well, so we need to take all the confidence we can get.
Definitely, of course. You've got to take that momentum and take it to that game and do the same things that you've been doing and just hope that they're having another one of these days that they've been having recently.
Definitely.
And maybe just capitalise on a couple of good chances, and that should be enough. It's not going to take much to knock them mentally, so
No.
you need to hope that you manage to sort of get that aspect of it done, and then the rest should take care of itself. But we've got one other game on Saturday there. Ross County at home to what is currently fairly high-flying Dunfermline.
Yeah, well, this is the interesting one for me for Dunfermline. If Dunfermline are really serious about pushing up for the playoffs, this will be a game where they go and at least get a point. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. We did question whether Ross County beating Wraith at home a couple of weeks ago was going to be them back.
Yeah.
Clearly it isn't.
No,
A draw away at St Johnstone was decent, but then obviously a loss away at Thistle. When I seen them, they were pretty poor. So I'm not expecting, to be honest, the best game up in Dingwall here, because I just think Dunfermline are so inconsistent. But I'm
Yeah.
looking for one of these sides to prove me wrong and to go and put on a good performance here, Cam.
100%. Yeah, no, I think this will be, maybe not the most exciting game of the weekend, but one that could certainly throw up a surprise or two. I suppose whatever way you look at that game, if there's a victory in that team by either team, it's probably a bit of a surprise. Ross County, due to their form and not being able to win at home at all, and Dunfermline just being so inconsistent and coming up against a really good squad. So I think either way you're looking at that, if it's not a draw, I think there'll be a slight surprise. But we'll keep tuned with that, and we'll come back to you next week and we'll discuss it a wee bit further and see how wrong we were about everything. Talking about being wrong about everything. Predictions time, and we've got 3 weeks worth to look at here, so we're just going to barrel straight on into it. We're going to start with game week 7, which had been waiting on the Partick Thistle Ayr game, which is now in, so we can now review the scores. So it started off with St Johnstone Dunfermline, which you correctly got as 2-1, 5 points on the board. I thought it was going to be 3-1 St Johnstone, so I only got 2 points there. Airdrie against Wraith, it was 0-0. I had 2-2, so I got 2 points there. You had a Wraith Rovers victory. We both we both got this one wrong. Arbroath against Morton, it was a draw, 1 each. I had Arbroath, you had Morton for a 2-1 victory. Ross County against Queen's Park, neither of us had Queen's Park winning that one. God, that was all the way back then that we're doing. So 2-1 Queen's Park there, only victory so far this season. And Thistle against Ayr, you got 2 points for that one because you thought it was going to be 3-2 Thistle, whereas I had 2-2.
Oh.
So total for game week 7, 4 points for me, 7 points for you. Opening that up a little bit further, but we'll get on to that. Game week 10 now, which was waiting for the Airdrie Dunfermline game, which, spoiler alert, we didn't get. We both thought Airdrie were going to win that match. They obviously have not. Arbroath against Queen's Park. I had Queen's Park for a victory, you had it for a draw. No points there. Morton against Thistle. I correctly got 1-1.
Oh, very nice.
You went for a 2-1 Thistle victory. We got the Wraith Ayr game wrong. We did not have Ayr winning that one. You got 2 points for the St Johnstone Ross County game by guessing 1-1. It was obviously 0-0. And as mentioned, we didn't get any points for the Airdrie Dunfermline game. So 5 points for me, 2 points for you in game week 10.
Yeah.
And then the current week, game week 11. I'm just hiding it from Jack so he can't actually see it. So it's still a bit of a surprise for him. Dunfermline against Wraith Rovers. We got nothing there. I went for a Wraith victory. You went for a draw. Arbroath against St Johnstone. We didn't get that. We were not expecting Arbroath to win that
Not
one.
a good start.
Ayr against Morton. We both got 2 points here. I had 2-0. You had 3-1. Obviously being 2-1. Thistle against County. We both had 2-1 Thistle. So 2 points for each of us there. And then Queen's Park Airdrie. I don't know if you recall.
You had 0-0.
I had 0-0.
Nice.
5 points on the board.
Very nice.
So now with adding the points on for all those, just for everyone there, game week 11, that's 9 points for me, 4 points for you. So it's actually a little bit closer than it had been. Cam on 57 points, Jack on 61.
Oh, very close.
4 point gap. When I put in the ones for game week 7, it was like 9 points or something like that. And then when that's added in 10 and 11, it evened it back out a wee bit.
Very
So-
close this season. It's exciting stuff.
Yes.
So
and
who's kicking off this week?
It is you to kick us off this week. It's an even week. Curry is even.
Okay, so pressure on. You know, I spoke about this one. It's a difficult one to predict, actually. Airdrie against Arbroath.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for a draw here.
Ooh.
I'm going to go 1 each.
Okay, that was initially my thinking. Am I still thinking that? No. I think Arbroath are going to win 2-1.
2-1 Arbroath. And this is an interesting one here. You
Yeah.
know, Morton at home against St Johnstone. I'm actually going to back St Johnstone to come back here and get a win. It's going to be close, though. It's going to be a fight. 2-1.
1-2 in there, and I'm actually we're going to inverse here, and I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw in this one. I think St Johnstone will drop points.
Okay, interesting. I like that. I like that. Queen's Park at home against Aircam. I'm not expecting
No.
a great afternoon for your side. I'm expecting it to be an interesting one. I'll say 2-1 as well to Ayr United.
You're giving us the benefit of a goal. I'm not. I'm going 2-0 Ayr.
You'll be upset after that one.
Yeah, I will be upset, and I won't want to do anything afterwards.
Mm.
Wraith Rovers against Partick Thistle.
You know, I spoke about it many times, you know, not a good record up there. I'm not going to back us to get a defeat. I'm also not going to back us to win.
Okay.
I'll take a draw. I've went for a few high scoring ones this game season. I'm not going to go for that here though. I'll play it safe and go 1 each.
1 each. Now, you said when I gave my St Johnstone prediction that you would like that, but I don't think you'll like this one. I think Wraith Rovers are just going to sneak a 1-0 victory.
I could see that happen. Billingston nonsense or something.
Yeah.
And then, you know, a really difficult one to predict here. Ross County Dunfermline. I'm only going to do my prediction right on the basis that I actually think Dunfermline are just unpredictable.
Okay.
And the fact that they've went 3 unbeaten means that they will now lose.
Of course.
So I'm going to go 1-0 Ross County.
I also think Ross County are going to win this one against all odds. I think they're maybe going to stretch their legs just a little bit outside of a 1-0. So I'm going to go 2-0
2-0
Ross County.
Interesting.
So just to recap there, Airdrie against Arbroath. I've went 2-1 Arbroath. You have went 1-1. Morton St Johnstone. I've went 1 each. You have went 2-1 St Johnstone. Queen's Park against Ayr. We're both forecasting an Ayr United victory. 2-0 for me, 2-1 for you. Wraith against Thistle. I've put down Wraith 1, Thistle 0. You've went for a 1-0 draw. And County against Dunfermline. We're both thinking County's going to win that one. I've got 2-0. You have 1-0.
Locked it in.
All locked in, ticked, and iPad locked.
Yeah,
that's
and
it.
away.
The predictions are done
And
for
that's-
this week. We've caught up on all the games that we were missing as well, so we're all up to date. If you're playing along at home, you're probably doing better than we are.
Yeah,
So,
if you are playing along at home, let us know how many points you've got at this stage of the season and let us know how you're competing against us, and we can even get a wee leaderboard going. You know, me,
Yes.
you, and
Yeah.
whatever listeners are playing along at home. So
Scouts Honour as well, you know. You've got no one's checking you that you predicted correctly beforehand. You know, stay true to your word,
oh yeah,
folks
absolutely.
at home.
and as always, if you've made it to this part of the podcast, and thank you very, very much, we do appreciate you listening every single week. Give it a wee share on your social media, give us a like as well if you are enjoying it, and of course, you know, you'll get that extra luck for your team winning this weekend.
That's it.
Wraith Rovers fans, you must obviously not be liking the podcast, so get yourselves doing that pronto. Thistle fans, keep it up. So literally, we will be back, listeners, next week. You will be back in video form, I presume. So
Theoretically speaking, yes.
speaking, so, but I hope you have an excellent rest of your week and a great weekend, and we'll catch you later on.
Thank you all very much. Have a good night. See you later.